When your win feels so unfair to them, they start calling it illegal. That's when you know you didn't just beat them, you buried their whole game. Now imagine this for a moment. Chosen one, you played by the rules, you moved with patience, you let your work, your grind, your silence speak. And yet, you won so big, the people who swore you'd never make it are now whispering in back rooms, calling the system, searching for loopholes, even dragging the feds into it, as if your victory was some kind of crime. That's the level of shock you've created. You didn't break the rules, they did. But your success exposed them so badly, it feels like the universe just flipped the table on their whole operation. Here's a fact to hold close. Studies show envy triggers the same parts of the brain as physical pain. That means your success is not just annoying them, it's burning them alive inside, like fire against skin. They can't escape it because your win is public, undeniable, and permanent. And thank you, Chosen One. Don't forget to pay this message back by simply pressing like and subscribe. Help spread this truth to more souls, because it's our responsibility to shine light where others tried to keep it dark. Thank you for being part of this mission. You're not just listening, you're part of a force that rattles the ground they stand on. Now, back to the message. Chosen One, what you've achieved has shifted the ground beneath their feet. This isn't just about winning anymore, it's about rewriting the narrative. Your victory wasn't supposed to exist in their script. They planned on you failing quietly, disappearing silently, becoming a name that no one remembered. Instead, you did the opposite. You grew louder in silence, you gained strength when you were supposed to be weak, and you became visible at the exact moment they thought they had erased you. And now they're panicking like guilty men standing trial because the spotlight has flipped and they can't handle how exposed they are. Think about it. Every time history has seen someone rise far above the limits others set, the same pattern unfolds. From athletes banned because they were too good, to artists censored because their truth was too sharp, the universe has always forced systems to choke when real power shows up. And that's what's happening with you. They see you winning in ways that don't fit their script, so instead of clapping, they're crying foul. They're calling the feds because they can't call it fair. They're rewriting the rule book because you shredded their old one just by existing in your full power. The crazy part? You didn't even fight them directly. You didn't chase revenge. You didn't plot their downfall. You focused on your growth, your vision, your lane. And that's what made their empire of lies collapse. It's like watching a mirror crack without you touching it. Your reflection alone shattered their illusion. That's why they're restless now, pulling strings in the dark, making calls in the night, asking questions they don't want the answers to. They're not scared of what you did. They're scared of who you've become. And Chosen One, let me make this clear, this is bigger than you. Your victory is proof to every underestimated soul that the game isn't rigged the way the enemy says it is. It proves the universe will bend when your will is stronger than their schemes. You've become living evidence that truth outlasts manipulation, that integrity cuts deeper than lies, and that silence screams louder than their noise. They thought your story ended in defeat. Instead, you've turned into the headline they can't stop reading, the case study they can't dismiss, the example that makes others question. If they could win after everything, what excuse do I have? Picture them now, Chosen One, sleepless, paranoid, scrolling through their own messages, wondering what dirt might come to light next. Some are calling in favors, some are hiding assets, some are even rehearsing fake apologies, hoping to soften the blow of what's coming. But no matter what they do, it won't erase the fact that your win was clean, it was earned, and it was unstoppable. You didn't just win, you embarrassed the system that tried to bury you. And that's why it feels illegal to them. The truth is, nothing illegal happened. What happened is rare. You exposed how fragile their power really was. You became the earthquake that showed the mountain was hollow. You are the one standing tall, while they scramble to rebuild their lies in the rubble. And now, every chosen one watching this knows, they can't outlaw your shine. They can't police your growth. They can't call your truth a crime. All they can do is sit back, watch, and feel the burn. This is why your story matters, chosen one. Because you didn't just win for yourself, you won for every soul who's been silenced, doubted, underestimated, or betrayed. You are the reminder that no enemy, no scheme, no rigged system can hold back the force of a person aligned with the universe's timing. And if they're calling the feds now, it's only proof that you've reached a level where your name itself feels dangerous. Chosen one, this is your moment. Your victory is their nightmare, and this intro is just the beginning of the truth they can no longer hide from. And chosen one, thank you for locking in with me right now, because what I'm about to break down is not just another story, it's your story. You've won so hard. The noise you created has turned into sirens in their heads, and if you click away too early, you'll miss the exact moves that prove why they're treating your success like a crime. Drop a comment with the number 777 if you're ready to expose how deep this goes. And don't forget to show love back with a like or even a super thanks, because this mission isn't just about words. It's about fueling a force that keeps shining light on the tricks they thought they buried. Whether it's 1 cent or 1,000, your energy drives this message forward, chosen one, and together we're making sure it reaches every soul that needs this truth. And now, let's take it step by step. Believe me, if you've ever doubted your own power, you'll regret missing what comes next. So stay with me till the end, because the deeper we go, the more undeniable it gets. Let's get started. Number 1. They took your silence for surrender, and now it's blowing up in their face. Never mistake silence for weakness. Sometimes it's the sound of a storm gathering that will rip your whole foundation apart. Chosen one, your enemies made the deadliest mistake a rival can make. They thought your quiet meant they'd already won. They looked at your calm, your stillness, your decision not to swing back at every cheap shot, and they read it as defeat. But silence was your weapon, not your wound. While they wasted energy staging performances, gossiping in corners, and laughing too loud to convince themselves they had the upper hand, you were calculating, observing, recording every move. What they never realized is that silence doesn't erase, it documents. Every insult, every betrayal, every sly move they thought disappeared into thin air, got filed in the universe's archive. And now, that file is opening, and it's reading like a list of their own confessions. Let's be real. Why did they underestimate you? Because patience is something they can't understand. To them, power is noise. They think dominance is shouting, flexing, flashing. So when you didn't respond, they assumed they broke you. But ask yourself, was it really weakness, or was it the strategy of someone too smart to play a dirty game on their level? The truth is simple. You were gathering information, building strength, stacking your patience like ammunition. Every second you stayed quiet, the pressure mounted until silence turned into the loudest move of all. And now, that explosion is happening in front of their eyes. Now imagine this for a moment. A lion in tall grass doesn't roar before the kill, it waits. That's what your silence was. It wasn't fear, it wasn't surrender, it was camouflage. And now that you've stepped out, your presence alone is a roar they can't drown out. Your silence was the setup, your victory is the punchline, and they're choking on it because they never thought you had the patience to strike when it mattered most. Here's the fact they'll never admit out loud. Studies in psychology show that silence during conflict creates more anxiety in the aggressor than direct confrontation. That's because silence forces them to sit with themselves, to hear their own guilt echoing, to wonder what you're planning. And chosen one, your silence had them pacing at night, replaying conversations, second-guessing their own lies. That's why your quiet was never weakness. It was the most brutal form of pressure you could apply. They'll try to flip the story now, of course. They'll say you were hiding, that you had nothing to say, that your absence meant you were out of moves. But here's the reality. Silence doesn't mean absence. Silence is preparation. Silence is strategy. And silence is what scared them the most, even when they pretended it didn't. Because deep down, they knew you weren't responding, but you were remembering. You weren't fighting, but you were sharpening. You weren't retreating, but you were reloading. And when the time came, your strike would hit harder than any of their empty noise. Think of it like this. A courtroom doesn't shout back at the criminal. It builds a case. Every piece of evidence is collected quietly, every fact stacked carefully until the day of judgment arrives, and the guilty can't escape. That's what you've done, chosen one. You've let them think they were running the show while you built the case in silence. And now the judgment is undeniable. They can call the feds, they can call lawyers, they can scream illegal until their throats crack. But the truth is, their panic is the loudest proof of all. And maybe you've asked yourself, why didn't I fight back sooner? Why didn't I say something when they were mocking me? That question, chosen one, is exactly what proves your wisdom. Fighting them back then would have been like wrestling pigs in the mud, messy, pointless, and designed to drag you down to their level. You knew better. You let them build their case against themselves while you stood still, untouchable. Now when you speak, when you win, when you stand, every move carries the weight of all that patience, all that build-up, all that undeniable truth, and they can't stand it. Let's hit them harder. Imagine someone who spends months ridiculing you, mocking you, treating you like background noise. Then one day, the tables flip, and suddenly you're the one at the center, and the spotlight exposes every crack in their mask. That's where they are now. They thought your silence was a coffin, but it was a cocoon. And now you've emerged, not buried, but reborn. And they can't explain how the one they counted out became the one the universe crowned. The loudest one in the room is often the weakest, but the one who stays silent, then speaks once, can move armies. Let that sink in, chosen one. They confused your restraint with fragility, but what you were really doing was protecting your energy. You weren't broken, you were unbothered. And that is why your silence has turned into their sentence. They're not haunted by your words. They're haunted by the fact you didn't need words to prove them wrong. Now, their miscalculation is their curse. Every time they think of you, it's not your silence they remember. It's the consequences that followed it. They're replaying moments, wishing they hadn't underestimated you, wishing they hadn't mistaken your patience for surrender. But it's too late. You've already shown them what silence can do. You've already proven that the quietest person in the room can become the loudest chapter in the story. And chosen one, don't forget, your silence wasn't just for you. It was for everyone who needed proof that you don't have to bark to bite, that you don't have to announce your power for it to be real. You've become that living evidence. They thought they had the script written, but your silence tore it up and rewrote it in permanent ink. And now they're forced to sit with that reality, trembling as the universe plays back the lesson they begged to avoid. Underestimate the quiet one, and you'll learn the hard way what real power looks like. So remember this: silence was never surrender. It was strategy. It was a storm disguised as stillness. And now that storm has arrived, and they're standing in the wreckage they never saw coming. Number 2. You studied their playbook until it became their downfall. The sharpest blade is forged in silence, and by the time they notice the shine, it's already at their throat. Chosen one, your enemies thought you would remain blind forever, stumbling through life without ever noticing the traps they laid for you. They assumed you'd never learn the rules of their game, never master the codes, never touch the documents they buried under jargon and fine print. They built their power on your supposed ignorance, on the belief that you'd never rise above the illusions they carefully staged. But while they mocked, you studied. While they played games, you learned the language that would one day dismantle their entire strategy. They thought they were safe behind laws, rules, and loopholes, but you turned their system into your study guide. And now they're staring at the fact that you didn't just survive the maze, you mastered it better than its architects. Think about it for a moment. How many times did they laugh behind closed doors, convinced you'd never notice the contracts, the hidden lies, the fine print they thought would bury you? They believed the system was on their side, that it would protect them forever. But what they never counted on was your hunger to understand. You didn't need a classroom. You didn't need their permission. You didn't need their approval. You learned in silence, like a storm charging up energy in the distance. And by the time lightning struck, you weren't just ready, you were precise. Ignorance is what they preyed on, but awareness is what destroyed them. That's the truth. You didn't just open your eyes, you sharpened them. Every loophole they built to protect themselves became a weapon in your hand. Every shady move they hid in complicated language became the very evidence that exposed them. They thought the game was rigged permanently, but you proved something powerful. Even the most complicated systems crumble when someone has the patience to understand them from the inside out. Now imagine this, chosen one. A magician dazzles the crowd with sleight of hand, pulling coins from behind ears, making objects vanish into thin air. The audience gasps because they don't know the trick. But you stood in silence, watching, learning, catching the flick of the wrist, the hidden pocket, the false smile. And once you saw the trick for what it was, the magician lost all power. That's exactly what you did. You cracked their illusion. And when illusions are exposed, the ones who built them become clowns instead of masters. You might ask yourself, but why me? Why did I have to go through so much betrayal, so much deception, just to see the truth? The answer is simple, because only those who've been lied to repeatedly learn how to spot the lie. Only those who've walked through traps develop the eyes to dismantle them. What they meant to use against you became the very curriculum that transformed you. They gave you unwilling lessons in corruption, and you turned it into mastery of justice. Every time they buried evidence, they planted seeds for your harvest. That's another truth they'll choke on, because while they were hiding, you were gathering. While they were covering tracks, you were memorizing the trail. While they were laughing at your silence, you were becoming fluent in their language. And when you finally spoke, it wasn't with rage, it was with precision. That's what terrifies them now. Rage they could handle, but precision. Precision is lethal. Now imagine this again. A chess player smugly assumes you don't know the rules. They let you sit across the board, laughing, making grand gestures with their pawns and knights. They believe the game is already won. But in silence, you learn the patterns, you memorize the moves, you calculate 3 steps ahead. And then, without warning, you checkmate them in a game they thought you didn't even understand. Their arrogance was their downfall, because your silence wasn't ignorance, it was strategy. And let's be clear, chosen one. You didn't announce your education. You didn't tell them what you were learning. You absorbed it quietly, letting it seep into your bones, building layer after layer of understanding, until you became something they had no defense against. Unstoppable precision, wrapped in deadly calm. That's why they panic now, because your knowledge doesn't scream, it slices, it doesn't flaunt, it strikes. They don't know how much you know. And that uncertainty is eating them alive. When the student learns in silence, the teacher never sees the moment they're outmatched. That's exactly what happened here. They thought they were untouchable because they held the knowledge, but you turned knowledge into power. You didn't need their approval to study. You needed their arrogance to slip. And slip it did. Every time they underestimated you, they handed you another piece of the puzzle. And now that you've assembled it, they can't unsee what you've become. Here's another metaphor for you. Picture an architect building a fortress, laughing because they're sure no one could ever break in. But while they celebrate, you study the blueprints they left carelessly lying around. You learn every crack, every weak point, every hidden exit. Then one day, without warning, you walk through the walls they swore were impenetrable. That's the reality you've created. You didn't need to fight at the gates. You walked straight through because you knew exactly where the fortress would collapse. And maybe you wonder, but wasn't it unfair that I had to go through so much pain to learn this? Yes, it was unfair. But here's the brutal truth. Unfair doesn't mean powerless. You turned the unfairness into wisdom, and wisdom into strength. That's why your enemies can't sleep. They know you're not just stronger, you're smarter. You don't just have power, you have proof. And proof is something no one can erase. So let's hit them with one more truth. The system they built to trap you became the very system that exposed them. That's the irony they'll never admit. They created rules, thinking they'd be safe behind them. But in learning their rules, you learned how to flip the script. Now they're the ones trapped, suffocating under the very weight of the laws they once used to control. Chosen one, that's why your victory feels illegal to them. Because they never expected you to master their own game. They thought you'd stay confused, stay blind, stay lost. Instead, you became the one player they could never outwit. And now, every chosen one watching this knows silence, study, and patience aren't weakness. They're the most dangerous weapons of all. You are the storm they never saw gathering, the courtroom they never prepared for, the chess master they never imagined they were playing against. And the beauty of it all, you didn't need noise, you didn't need permission, you didn't need validation. You let their arrogance become your textbook, and now your knowledge is the verdict they can't appeal. And so, chosen one, never forget. Your silence wasn't just patience, it was preparation. Your study wasn't just curiosity, it was survival. And your knowledge isn't just power, It's the very hammer of justice that has already fallen. Number 3. When the courtroom turned into a battlefield, they couldn't win. The most dangerous weapon isn't a sword or a gun. It's the truth, delivered with the calm of someone who knows they can't be broken. Chosen one, when you finally stepped into that courtroom, it wasn't just about paperwork or procedures, it was a war zone. They strutted in with smirks, rehearsed lies, and the fake confidence of people who believe they've already won. But the second you opened your mouth, the whole atmosphere shifted. It was no longer their stage, it was your battlefield. The silence you carried before became a force that cracked through their armor, and suddenly every word you spoke hit harder than a hammer slamming down. Now imagine this. A predator enters a forest, believing it owns the ground, chest puffed out, teeth bared. But then, without warning, the air changes, the wind flips, and they realize they've walked into territory they don't control. That's what happened to them. They thought the courtroom was theirs, but the moment you spoke, the energy tilted. Truth has a frequency they can't match, sharper than any blade, heavier than any gavel, and they felt it cut through their lies like paper. Here's a fact they'll never escape. Psychological studies show that people who lie under pressure leak micro-expressions, tiny flashes of fear, shame, or guilt. They can rehearse all they want, but their own bodies betray them when the truth enters the room. And chosen one, your presence did exactly that. Your calm turned their confidence into cracks. Your evidence didn't just expose them, it made them unravel in real time. You might wonder, why did my words matter so much? Why did the room change just because I spoke? The answer is simple. Because your words weren't empty. They weren't a performance. They carried weight born of suffering, endurance, and clarity. Lies are light. They scatter when pressed. But truth is heavy. It lands like stone, and when it dropped from your mouth, it silenced their theater instantly. A lie can stand tall for years, but one moment of truth will collapse it like a house of cards. That's exactly what they faced. Every smirk they rehearsed, every script they memorized, burned to ash under the heat of your reality. They thought they were untouchable. Instead, they found themselves cornered by something they couldn't outwit, your living testimony. Chosen one, that's why the courtroom became a battlefield, because you didn't just show up to defend yourself, you showed up to expose them, and once the truth was spoken, it wasn't you on trial anymore, it was them. Number 4. When one strike of the gavel shook their whole world apart. One victory in the right hands is never just personal. It's an earthquake that cracks the ground beneath everyone who stood against you. Chosen one, your win didn't stay locked inside the 4 walls of that courtroom. The moment the gavel came down, it was like a thunderclap that echoed far beyond the judge's bench. Families felt it. Friendships split under the weight of it. Whole communities were forced to confront truths they had been avoiding for years. People who once smirked in silence, who turned their backs on you when you needed them most, suddenly had no choice but to face their cowardice. Your victory became a mirror they couldn't escape, reflecting every betrayal, every fake smile, every moment they chose comfort over courage. Now imagine this. A ship that everyone thought was unsinkable suddenly takes a hit. What happens? The rats jump first, and that's exactly what your enemy's allies did. The moment the universe declared you the victor, their so-called supporters abandoned them faster than shadows at sunrise. The same voices that once cheered against you went silent overnight. terrified to be caught standing beside a sinking empire. Loyalty built on lies has no spine, and your win revealed that truth with brutal clarity. Here's the irony. Those who once laughed at your pain now scramble to rewrite history, claiming they always believed in you. They're desperate to wash their hands clean, to act like they saw your strength from the beginning. But facts don't bend to convenience. Everyone knows where they stood when the storm hit. Everyone remembers who mocked and who stayed silent. And now their reputations carry stains that no amount of pretending can scrub away. Silence is remembered just as loudly as betrayal, and once the truth arrives, it exposes both. That's what your victory did. It forced the world to acknowledge not only your enemy's schemes, but the hypocrisy of those who stood by. Your silence, once mistaken for weakness, has now grown louder than their collective screams. It echoes in every corner, reshaping reputations, burning through facades, making it impossible for anyone to keep playing innocent. Chosen One, your win was never just about you. It was a ripple that became a tidal wave, crashing through every false bond, every shaky alliance, every mask that pretended to be real. And the ones who underestimated you? They're now left standing in the open, exposed, with nowhere to hide. Number 5. Silence was the trap they walked into. Blindfolded. Silence is not surrender. It's the quiet click of a loaded weapon waiting for the perfect moment to fire. Chosen One, they thought your silence was fear. They mocked you, whispered rumors, spread lies, and mistook your stillness as proof that you had nothing left. But while they were wasting energy on their little theatrics, you were conserving yours. You weren't empty. You were charging. You weren't lost. You were watching. And every false word they spoke, every scheme they tried to dress up as truth, became another bullet in the chamber you were quietly filling. Now imagine this. A hunter stomps through the forest, loud and careless, believing the silence means no danger is near. But crouched in the tall grass is a predator, still, focused, waiting for the exact moment to strike. That was you. Your silence was the camouflage, your patience the setup, and when the time came, your words landed with the force of thunder, undeniable and unstoppable. Here's the fact. Psychology proves that silence in the face of provocation makes liars anxious. They can't stand the stillness because it forces them to keep talking, to reveal their own cracks, to expose their own guilt. That's what your silence did. It stripped them bare. It showed the world they were everything they accused you of being: bitter, insecure, deceitful. They ended up writing their own confession while you just sat and observed. A fool reveals themselves by rushing to speak, but the wise dismantle them by saying nothing until the right moment. That was your strategy. You didn't need to meet noise with noise. You let them burn themselves out. Let them spend all their energy performing for an audience that eventually grew tired of their act. By the time you finally spoke, the contrast was undeniable. Their voices cracked under the weight of lies, while your truth thundered through the room like a storm breaking the silence of a long drought. Chosen One, never forget. Your silence wasn't weakness. It was the most dangerous weapon you had. They thought you were retreating, but you were resetting. They thought you were finished, but you were preparing. And when you finally broke the silence, you turned it into the sound of their downfall. Number 6. When the universe came to collect their debt with interest. Every injustice is a loan that comes due with interest, and when the universe collects, it doesn't accept excuses, only payment. Chosen one, every wound they gave you wasn't forgotten. It was recorded. Every betrayal, every lie, every time they tried to strip you of dignity, it all went into the cosmic ledger. They thought they were clever, that cruelty would vanish into the air, that forgiveness was stupidity. But what they never understood is this: the universe doesn't let debts slide. It waits, it calculates, and when the books are balanced, the payment isn't just exact, it's multiplied. Now imagine this. A thief steals from a vault day after day, thinking no one is watching. They get bold, careless, convinced the books will never be checked. Then one morning, the doors slam shut, the alarms blare, and the accountant is standing there with every number tallied. That's what happened here. They weren't just stealing moments from you, they were stacking debt against themselves. And now the collection has begun. Here's a fact they'll never admit. Research on karma and justice psychology shows that humans crave fairness so deeply, their brains light up like they've won money when justice is served. That's why your victory felt so powerful. It wasn't random, it wasn't luck, it was the natural order correcting itself. The universe added interest to every scar they left you with and paid it back in ways they can't undo. Kindness is not weakness, it's credit. Forgiveness is not stupidity, it's patience. And when the universe collects, it pays in full. That's the lesson they're choking on. They assumed your patience was infinite, but in reality, it was the rope they used to hang themselves. They saw mercy and mistook it for stupidity. But chosen one, mercy is never free. It comes with an invoice, and now the bill has arrived, stamped and sealed by forces bigger than them. So understand this: your win wasn't luck. It was accounting. It was the universe balancing its books with ruthless precision. And they didn't just pay what they owed, they paid damages. Every sleepless night, every fake smile, every scheme you endured turned into interest. And when the balance cleared, it left you standing in profit while they collapsed under the weight of their own debt. Number 7. You redefined justice and left them afraid to play the game again. The day you won, the old rules died. Fear stopped working, lies stopped sticking, and bullies stopped looking untouchable. Chosen one, before your victory, the air was heavy with an unspoken law. The loudest liar wins. In your family, in your circle, maybe even in your community, it looked like manipulation always thrived, while honesty got crushed. Bullies strutted around as if intimidation was the only language that mattered. But you shattered that illusion. With one decisive win, you rewrote the standard. Now silence is stronger than shouting, calm is sharper than chaos, and preparation slaughters performance. You didn't just beat your enemies, you exposed a truth that terrifies every manipulator watching from the sidelines. Their time is up. Now imagine this. A crooked casino runs for years, rigging the games, making sure the house always wins. People play, lose, and walk away, believing it's just the way the world works. Then one day, someone walks in, plays by the same rules, and walks out with the jackpot. Suddenly, the myth is broken. Suddenly, everyone sees the system isn't as rigged as they were told. That's what your story did. You didn't just win for yourself, you proved the game can be flipped. And now, manipulators everywhere are trembling at the thought of facing another version of you. Here's a fact. Studies on social dynamics show that when one person breaks a toxic pattern, it forces the whole group to reevaluate what's possible. That's why your victory feels so much bigger than just you. You've become the case study. The proof that intimidation collapses when confronted with clarity. Your win wasn't just personal, it became cultural, setting a new template that underdogs everywhere can follow. Manipulators fear exposure more than failure because once the curtain is pulled back, the show is over. That's what you did. You tore the curtain, and now every would-be bully hesitates. They second-guess themselves, wondering if their next target might be another you, patient, prepared, and lethal in silence. Chosen one, understand this. You didn't just set yourself free, you set a new standard, and now your example haunts the people who once thrived on fear because you proved once and for all, justice doesn't whisper anymore. It roars. Number 8. Their panic is the loudest proof of your victory. When the losers start screaming, "This can't be legal," it's not proof you cheated. It's proof you crushed them so hard they can't process reality. Chosen one, just look at them now. The frantic calls, the sleepless nights, the way they scramble to convince anyone who will listen that what you did couldn't possibly be legitimate. Their panic is the clearest evidence of how badly you broke them. You didn't just win, you dismantled their entire belief system. For years, they thought intimidation was power, that lies were stronger than truth, and that fear was the only real currency. But the second you won, that fantasy world they built cracked wide open. Now imagine this. A gambler stacks the deck, cheats for years, and convinces himself he's untouchable. Then one day, someone sits across from him, plays the same deck, and wins clean. He flips the table, screaming that it must be rigged. That's exactly what's happening with your enemies. They never understood the real game, so now they're left screaming, "It's impossible," when in reality it was their arrogance that collapsed. Here's a fact that burns them. Psychology shows panic is the body's admission of powerlessness. Their frantic energy isn't strength, it's weakness exposed, and that's why they can't sit still now. They're shaking because your victory proved consequences exist, and for the first time, they're forced to face a scoreboard they can't manipulate. Power built on lies always panics when truth walks into the room. That's what you've shown. They thought they were safe forever, but your win dragged them into reality. Now their worldview is rubble, their confidence shattered, their alliances scattering like ash in the wind. They don't just fear what you did, they fear what it means. Because if you could rise against all odds, then their whole system of control is a house of cards. Chosen one, never forget. Their panic is not your burden, it's your proof. Every desperate cry, every wild accusation, every trembling excuse is confirmation that your victory wasn't just personal, it was cosmic. The universe kept score, and when the books balanced, they were the ones left bankrupt. Number 9. They tried to make you a cautionary tale, but you became a legend. First, they mock your name, then they fear it, and finally they whisper it with respect they can't say out loud. Chosen one, remember when your name was dragged like dirt across the floor? When people used you as the example of what happens if you step out of line, if you dare to move differently, if you refuse to bend to their control. Back then, your name carried shame only because they painted it that way. They thought they had written the ending for you, sealing your reputation as a liability, a warning, a cautionary tale. But look at how it flipped. Now, the same name they laughed at is the one they can't ignore. It carries weight, it carries awe, and whether they admit it or not, it carries fear. Now imagine this, a broken piece of stone left on the roadside, kicked by passers-by, ignored as useless. Then years later, that same stone is lifted and placed at the top of a monument, admired by everyone who walks past. That's your story. They treated you like a mistake, but patience carved you into a masterpiece. Here's the fact. They didn't respect what you did because respect wasn't enough. They're intimidated by how you did it. The precision of your patience, the silence that never cracked, the timing that cut like a blade. All of it turned your reputation into something bigger than survival. It became a legend. Legends aren't just remembered, they're studied. And now, even strangers who don't know you personally hear your story and walk taller, braver, because they know David can still topple Goliath when truth outweighs lies. A liability in their eyes becomes a legend in history when patience is sharper than aggression. That's exactly what you've proven. The ones who once mocked you now measure themselves against you. The same circles that whispered your name as shame now whisper it as a warning. Don't underestimate them. Look what happened last time. Chosen one, your name no longer drags chains. It carries fire. From liability to legend, you've become living proof that patience, silence, and truth can turn even the deepest humiliation into a legacy that can't be erased. Number 10. You shattered the curse they tried to chain you with. Every family myth needs a scapegoat, but when the scapegoat learns the truth, the whole lie collapses. Chosen one, in toxic systems, there's always one person they pick to carry the weight of everyone else's dysfunction. You were that target. They branded you the problem, the black sheep, the one who couldn't fit in. But here's the truth. They didn't pick you because you were weak. They picked you because you were strong, because of your empathy, your integrity, your stubborn belief in what's right. They weaponized your virtues, twisted your kindness into naivety, and tried to make you the lightning rod for every storm in the family. Now imagine this, a cracked mirror in a house where no one wants to face themselves. They blame the mirror for being broken instead of confronting their own distorted reflections. That's what they did to you. They projected every hidden shame, every generational wound, every unspoken curse onto your back, and then laughed when you struggled to carry it. But here's what they never expected. You didn't break. You broke them. The black sheep was never the curse. It was the cure. That's what your story reveals. By refusing to accept their script, you exposed the entire mythology. The so-called troublemaker was actually the truth-teller. The one cast out as liability was the only one willing to drag the skeletons out of the closet. And when you did, the foundation of their lies cracked open. Here's a fact. Psychology shows that scapegoated children in toxic families often grow into cycle breakers, the ones who refuse to repeat the dysfunction. And chosen one, that's exactly what you've done. You didn't just survive the role they forced on you, you rewrote it. You ended the cycle. By standing tall, you proved that the curse wasn't you at all. It was the silence, the manipulation, the endless pattern of blame. Generations can live inside a lie until one person stands up and says, "No more." That person was you. You shattered the curse they tried to chain you with, and in doing so, you changed the legacy of your bloodline. The scapegoat became the liberator. The black sheep revealed itself as the white knight in disguise. And now, future generations will inherit truth instead of trauma because you had the courage to break what they refused to face. Number 11. You forged their weapons into the tools of their defeat. Every trick they used to break you became the very skill you used to bury them. Chosen One, the irony is brutal. They wrote their own ending. Every weapon they turned against you only made you sharper. They thought manipulation would confuse you, but it trained your eyes to spot deceit faster than anyone else. They thought lies would bury you, but they taught you to treasure the truth and document it with precision. They tried to scare you with threats of legal systems, but all they did was hand you the blueprint of their own downfall. They built you into the very strategist who dismantled them. Now imagine this. A blacksmith heats metal, hammering it violently, trying to bend it into something weak. But instead of breaking, the heat forges steel. That's exactly what happened to you. Their fire didn't destroy you. It made you unbreakable. They thought they were crushing you, but they were tempering you into a blade they couldn't block. Here's the fact. They turned you into their worst nightmare. Studies show people who endure repeated manipulation often develop heightened intuition, able to detect dishonesty with uncanny accuracy. That's why you can see through them now before they even open their mouths. They built the skill set that ensured their own collapse. The scapegoat became the general, the target became the tactician. That's your transformation. They wanted you as the victim, but you walked out as the strategist. Every trap they set became training. Every insult became instruction. Every battle became a lesson you used to flip the script. By the time you struck back, you weren't guessing. You were executing with precision they couldn't dream of. Chosen One, never forget. They created the very warrior who conquered them. Their weapons didn't destroy you. You turned them, sharpened them, and fired them back with deadly calm. And when the dust settled, it wasn't you lying in defeat. It was them, crushed under the weight of the arsenal they built with their own hands. Number 12, you rose above the prison. They're still rotting in. The real win isn't proving them wrong. It's reaching a place where their opinion doesn't even register. Chosen One, the greatest victory wasn't the paperwork, the gavel, or the evidence. It was the freedom inside your chest. You broke chains they're still tangled in, while they remain trapped in their own maze of lies, denial, and recycled manipulation. You've ascended to a level they can't follow. You no longer crave their apologies. You don't sit around waiting for their approval. You're done begging narcissists to show empathy they never had. That's the power they can't take back. You've outgrown their system entirely. Now imagine this. Prisoners scratch at the same four walls every day, thinking the whole world exists within that cage. Then one person finds the key, steps outside, and suddenly sees the horizon stretch wider than they ever dreamed. That's you. They're still in the cell, fighting over shadows, while you're breathing air they'll never touch. Freedom is when their voice becomes background noise and your peace drowns out every echo of their lies. That's where you are now. They still scream, still gossip, still plot, but it doesn't land anymore. Their words can't scar you. Their presence can't rattle you, because you've reached the place where they no longer matter. That's the victory they'll never understand. How someone they tried to crush now moves untouched by their entire existence. Here's a fact they'll choke on. Studies in emotional resilience prove the deepest healing comes not from revenge, but from detachment. When the wound no longer defines you. That's your triumph. They thought you'd be scarred for life, circling their orbit forever. Instead, you built a life beyond them, in a realm where their shadows don't reach. Chosen One, your ultimate victory wasn't winning their game, it was leaving their game behind. They're still playing checkers in a rigged corner while you're soaring in open skies. And the cruelest cut of all? They'll spend the rest of their lives screaming inside that prison while you walk free, untouchable, in peace they'll never know. Number 13. You became the story that outlived their lies. Some victories end when the gavel falls. Yours began there, echoing louder than their screams could ever reach. Chosen one, you're no longer just someone who won a case. You became proof carved into history, living evidence that the universe never loses track, that every injustice is recorded and every debt is eventually paid. Your victory didn't stay in one courtroom, it spread. It became a whisper in survivor circles, a spark in therapy sessions, a story passed like a torch in communities where people thought justice was impossible. You became a symbol they can't erase, a reminder that truth doesn't just survive, it conquers. Now imagine this, a single flame lit in a pitch-black cave. At first, it seems small, fragile, but as eyes adjust, that single light becomes a guide, leading others out of the darkness. That's what you are now. Your story has become a lantern, showing people who thought they were powerless that patience is power, that silence is strategy, and that justice isn't a fairy tale. It's real. A lie may circle the globe 1,000 times, but one moment of truth will stop it dead in its tracks. That's the weight your name now carries. They tried to smear it, bury it, use it as a warning, but instead it became a legend. Their lies faded like smoke, but your truth became stone, etched into the minds of everyone who needed hope. Here's the fact. Sociologists have found that when one person stands up against injustice, the ripple effect shifts whole groups. Suddenly, others feel braver, stronger, ready to fight. That's what your win did. You didn't just close a chapter, you opened a new standard for what's possible. Even strangers who've never met you now walk taller because they know someone like you proved the system can bend, that the universe does balance, that silence in the right hands is a weapon sharper than any blade. Chosen one, your legacy isn't just personal, it's eternal. You're no longer a target, no longer a scapegoat, no longer a liability. You're the symbol of what happens when patience meets truth, when silence turns into thunder, when justice finally speaks. You didn't just win, you became the proof that justice is real, and that proof will outlive every enemy's lie. And chosen one, your story proves that truth always outlasts lies, and that silence, when timed right, can shake entire systems. You've turned every injustice into undeniable proof that justice is real and unstoppable. If this message resonated with you, press the like button if you haven't already, and if you're still not part of our family, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. Together, we spread light where they tried to keep darkness. Stay strong, stay unshakable, because your victory is just the beginning, and the world is still watching your legend grow.